Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the PDPreps podcast. It has been a while, but we are back. I don't know, Keenan, it's been a couple months or more than a couple months since we've done this. I think our last pod was, I want to say it was like after last football season or something, kind of looking at, wrapping up all of the 2022 season and then, looking ahead to the winter and spring sports. And I think that's where we left everybody, right?
No, I'm pretty sure it was, Gus. It was, yeah. I think we contemplated with kind of experimenting it for the winter, at least for the winter sports, but then things came up. You were gone and stuff like that. So, just figured we would have just kept it for football season for now. But who knows what the future may hold. But uh, what a year last year was. So
I know
here we go, back again.
We are back. I know it's we're bringing this guy back. It is officially game week, week 0 as they call it. Today is August 22nd. It is about 12:30, just afternoon. We're going to be looking ahead to or talking about a whole bunch of stuff in this pod. First one of our 2023 season. And looking over everything. This first week slate of games. Our preseason top 5, which should be out here once this podcast should be out, I think, later this week, and then our ranking should be out, I believe, earlier in the week. Talking all that, taking a look at the leagues that we cover: NBL, Oak, NBL, Redwood, VVAL, some NCL teams. We're going to touch on everything, kind of just a whole primer for the 2023 season. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the Cardinal Newman situation as well, but we'll touch on that at the end after we get through all the other fun stuff. So, Keenan, again, it's crazy that we're already here. A very, very memorable first year on the beat, as you mentioned. All of our league races came down to the final games of the season. A couple of really fun playoff runs, some really awesome performances from some individual players. But yeah, man, crazy awesome first year. I'm excited for year 2.
I wouldn't have wanted it any other way last year, to be honest with you. I think you could say the same. What is this, year 3 for you?
This is my 3rd football season. And
third football season.
Yeah, just hit 2 official full years here. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want it any other way. Just the drama that came with a lot of the league races, as you mentioned, and plus some awesome playoff games as well. Keep that in mind as well. Yeah. So it was just an awesome year of football last year. Excited for what's to come. We already got some major storylines on the way here already before week 0 is even kicked off. So here we go again. That's
for sure. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into our first topic of the day. We're looking at our preseason top 5 in the area. There was some consideration because we are going to be expanding some of our coverage zone into Napa this year, but we've not quite fully, we're working on bringing in another sports reporter to cover Napa. So we haven't really, we thought about including Napa in these rankings, but I think for now we're just going to keep it to I think it's 17 teams in our coverage area. The NBL schools, the local schools in the VVAL, and then a few schools in the NCL are kind of the schools that we consider for this. So, without further ado, our preseason top 5. Should we start with number 5? Should we start there?
Let's
work our way backwards.
Yeah. Let's make it a little different this year.
All right. So starting with number 5, we are starting with Casa Grande at number 5. Keenan, what did they go last year? I think the Gauchos went 7-4, 7. I should have just pulled it up.
Yeah, they were up there. I know they
6 and 5, 6 and 5, 6 and 5.
I know they didn't have the greatest start to the season. They were kind of up and down all year long, but kind of pulled it together when things mattered the most, as we'll get to in a sec. But then obviously pretty disappointing first round exit in the NCS playoffs.
Yep. But again, we are starting them at number 5. There was some consideration between Casa Grande, Petaluma, Ukiah. We think should be much better this year. They have a new great head coach in Paul Cronin. And then even some other teams like Carrillo, Pioneer, we think could be a little frisky as well. But Casa Grande, they had a very, very good GV team last year. They do have to replace a lot of guys, starting quarterback Wyatt Abramson, a bunch of those, really good receivers, Ryder Jacobson, kind of their do-it-all running back. A lot of guys to replace, but they still have Cody Cornelius. You just wrote a great feature on him over last weekend. Go read it if you haven't. Cody Cornelius, 3-star, big defensive lineman, one of the best defensive linemen in this area by far. A bunch of Division I offers. He's going to be a big part of their success this year. New quarterback for them, Danny Mercado. He's a baseball kid. And actually, we'll get more into kind of all the specifics and stuff, and stuff kind of later on. But yeah, Casa Grande, their numbers are good. Their offense is usually pretty good. Puts up some good points, and they had a very good young JV team last year. So you kind of previewed them too, you did write the preview for them too. So you might have a little more insight. But is that, I think just kind of based on what you were hearing too, I think they fit in pretty well at number 5.
Yeah, I think so too. It's funny. John Antonio, head coach, was talking about how tight knit this team was, and he's never seen a team like as close as he's ever been at Casa Grande. Like you said, that they are going to miss a bunch. Wad Ray Abramson, first team All League selection at quarterback. Ryder Jacobson, they lost a bunch on the outside. Spencer Allman, Lucas Miles, all those guys. They do bring some guys back, like you said, Cody Cornelius, Matt Riley's another big one, first team all leaguer as well. And they might surprise some people. I mean, they don't have those real big names on offense as they did last year, but like you said, their JV team was really good. They were blowing out people left and right. And then they went undefeated. So it'll be interesting to see how those JV college transition to varsity ball. As we know, it's a big difference, a little bit faster, especially on the ball. So we'll see how it goes. But right now, Casa Grande number 5, Gus.
Yep. And again, we'll get into more kind of team personnel and profile stuff kind of later on. Again, we have a lot to touch on, in this podcast, but so we'll get into all that more. So stay patient, all you football fans. But coming in number 4, I believe they were probably our team at number 4, I think all season last year. And that is St. Vincent. St. Vincent, another great season last year, although probably a little disappointed by their standards. They made it all the way, again, back to the Division 6 or Division 7, NCS title game, and then lost in a crazy shootout to Clear Lake. Big surprising, I know it was a 1 versus 2, but St. Vincent had been on the, inside track all season, go back to back in Division 7 and just did. Yeah, I just lost in a complete, total weird shootout that I don't think any of us expected would happen. They lose a ton of guys. Kai Hall's gone. Jared Passarge is gone. A bunch of their good linemen were gone. So they have a lot to replace, but I got to, Trent Herzog has really kind of made this into a very consistent, year in, year out program. And again, you wrote the preview on these guys as well, and it seems like they're kind of set up again just for a bit of a reload season here, and probably big things again in their future this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they definitely have reloaded, but there's Kai Hall was one of those players. It's almost like impossible to replace, right? Yeah. So they're definitely gonna have their work cut out for them, those St. Vincent running backs. But yeah, I was covering that championship game last year, like you mentioned, Gus. It was like 49-30 at halftime or something crazy. Weird, and like 17 seconds, Clear Lake hit that 2-point conversion that that ultimately did it, but I'm sure St. Vincent will be back. They're moving up a Division 6 now, so we'll see how they face that competition. But Gus, I do think if we're talking about last year a little bit, I do think it was at least our dream and many football fans' dream to see St. Vincent play one of our top 3 teams in the rankings because we kind of had to keep them at 4 the entire year because there wasn't that factor. But yeah, no, they should be reloaded and ready to go.
It is. I know it is unfortunate. I mean, it's just kind of the nature of high school football. A small school program like St. Vincent only has really things to gain out of playing because some of the big dogs like Windsor, Newman, and Rancho, who are the next top 3 teams here. But yeah, I mean, you're right though. It is one of these things where you'd love to kind of see this actually play out, but it's just these teams probably this probably won't ever happen. As at least for now. I mean, again, some of those top teams probably, like, no disrespect to St. Vincent, but it's just there's less in it for teams like Windsor, Newman, or Rancho, to play against St. Vincent.
Sure.
Now, again, we would love to see it. I think, I think it would be very competitive. And I think that's a big testament to what Trent has done over there at that program and turning them into, again, a very consistent powerhouse. But yeah, you're right. D6 will be an interesting challenge this year. And it will be a new challenge. So it should be fun to see how they fare with that. All right, moving on to number 3. We got the first of our 3 MBL Oak teams. And again, if you're familiar with this area, it's pretty easy kind of who these top 3 teams are going to be year in, year out. And it should be interesting too once we kind of get the Napa teams in here as well, or start including them kind of where like Vintage and American Canyon kind of stack up too. Sure. But yeah, coming in at number 3 right now is Rancho Cotati. Rancho Cotati finished second last year in the MBL Oak. They were, I believe, they made the quarterfinals, semifinals of
semis.
They made the semis. They lost to Campo Lindo, heartbreaking fashion. You were at that game as well, too.
Crazy game, too.
Another crazy game. But yeah, a lot of guys. They're going to be, again, Rancho, kind of same thing. Garrett Hodling, their coach has done a very good job of making that a very, very consistent program. I think they've won like 8 games at least, I think, in every year that he's been there, something like that. But very, very consistent program. They should be very good again this year, but a very different team from how from what they were last year. They had to switch quarterbacks, early or like about midway in the season. They're all league. They're all league guy. Liam Keeney got a pretty serious head injury and kind of had to miss the rest of the year. And luckily they had superstar Jacob Pruitt, slotted him in. Total stud athlete, great kid. He went on to be the MBL Oak back of the year, and he was stupendous. But a big part of that success too was guys like Cy Vajrawale, Ananias Walker, Malik Cleveland, Dylan Gagnon, a lot of guys who are no longer there, graduated, transferred, whatever. So a lot of new faces, very young, or at least like young in terms of varsity experience. They still have Pruitt. They're going to be a very, very dangerous running team this year. But a lot of new faces on the line, a lot of new faces in that defense, a lot of new faces on offense. So just kind of a lot of questions at this point. Again, I think they should still be very, very good. I think they'll definitely be in the hunt for the NBL Oak, and probably I think one of those top 4 teams in Division II in the NCS. But yeah, it'll just be kind of interesting to see it all, kind of how it plays out early on and how we how they look, because they do have some good teams early on in the season. So we'll find out pretty quickly what they're made of, but different look, but still very good. Because Keenan, you and I both saw them a bit during some 7-on-7 stuff over the summer. So, good, but maybe they're also their offense this year might not kind of fit into what's 7-on-7 stuff that we saw as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of unfortunate that you can't run the ball in 7-on-7, but but yeah, I mean, like you said, it's going to be kind of a, I wouldn't say new look, but like with a full season under this look kind of offense, you know what I'm saying? Because obviously, Garrick Hodling did a great job of kind of revamping that offense around Pruitt like mid-season last year on the fly, and they still made the NCS semis over it. So, I'm pretty excited to honestly see how they stack up against the competition this year. Keep in mind, some of those teams in Division II moved up to Division I, like Campo Lindo moved up to Division I. So I know the Campo Nation isn't too happy about that, but it'll be interesting to see how they stack up with this year's competition for sure.
Absolutely. All right, our final 2 teams here. I guess we'll just say them both, and then we'll kind of go into each of them. But number 2 is going to be Cardinal Newman, and then number 1 I think is pretty easy, but it's Windsor. We'll start with Cardinal Newman here. Lots of guys coming back. Tons of guys coming back. Didn't quite get it wasn't quite able to work out an exact number, and we'll get into the reason for that a bit later. But it's, kind of on paper, Newman has a ton of guys back. Yes, they do lose some pretty key players. Nick Ayer, who is kind of their specialist defensive back. Stud. A guy their top wide receivers, Zach Kelly, graduated. Their top running back, linebacker, Santino Acevedo. I'm getting him mixed up with Santiago Don. Santino Acevedo, he was the offensive player of the year last year at the Oak. He graduated. He's gone. And also their top returning tackler, Kaise Steverson, has I guess moved with his family back to Hawaii. Definitely some key names who are gone, but kind of looking at who they got back, they're going to be probably in prime shape this year for a pretty strong season. guys like Zach Holman, who I was pretty impressed by, during 7-on-7 stuff. He's going to be kind of, strong, running back, linebacker. Guys like Jesse Myers, an all-state defensive end, Jasper Kemp, really solid linebacker, and then some really, really good play at the line with guys like Jimmy McKenzie, Aiden Woods, and then Matt Hilden, who was their quarterback last year. He's going to be sliding back in to line this year because they have a new transfer, Jason Coulter, who's going to be playing quarterback for them. So, and then again, they also have some very, very talented freshmen coming in too. So, I think that, again, when you kind of look at all the pieces that they have coming back, their defense should be really good. Their running backs should be pretty good. I think they're going to be holding a lot of teams to, probably maybe two touchdowns a game, maybe even, less than that sometimes, depending on the competition, obviously. But I think their defense, should be really good. Their linebacker play should be very good, and their line play should be really good too. So there's definitely a lot of things that Newman has to look out for this year. But all that being said, this is Windsor's year, and I think everyone around here kind of knows that. We're talking about Newman with all their returners, but then you go down the line of Windsor returners, and it's literally almost their entire team from last year. And again, last year they went 10-3. They nearly came back and won the NCS Division III title game against El Cerrito, who was far and away, one of the best teams, in Northern California last year. And yeah, they're bringing almost everyone back. A couple of a bunch of their line guys are gone. A bunch of their starting line guys are gone, who are also, some all league guys, which are some big names to replace for sure. But every skill position is back. Hayden Anderson, Gunnar Erickson, Keenan McAllister, Wyatt Morris, Dom Morris, Max McFerrin. I mean, just going down the line. And then you even have, again, we also mentioned Ananias Walker, who was a really good wide receiver defensive back for Rancho Cotati, and he's now transferred over to Windsor. So after he sits out, he'll be eligible, I think, in like mid to late September. I mean, Ananias Walker, Hayden Anderson is like probably, one of the best, duos, out there on the wide receiver defensive backside. So, so much talent. Oh, and then also quarterback Judson Anderson too. He'll also be back, and I think he's primed for a big senior year too. So there are some, again, I think everyone's kind of is kind of looking at Windsor as like, this is the team in this area this year. They have a very, very hard schedule. They're off this week, but they open with Escalon next week, who I believe won the Division 4 or 5 state title last year. I forgot if it was double A or single A, but Escalon's very good. They play Campo Lindo again early this year. And then, of course, everyone I'm sure has the final game of the season, which is going to be Windsor, the rematch of Windsor Windsor versus Newman at Newman this year, which, that game last year decided the NBL title in controversial fashion too, which, we'll touch on too once we kind of get to our league previews. But again, if you're watching this, I'm sure you obviously know what happened in that game. But yeah, I mean, it's looking like, again, we're kind of, that we're kind of in shape here for another Windsor Newman collision course, and I think Rancho could probably be in that conversation too in the NBL Oak. But yeah, I mean, like it was last year, our top 3 teams are from the best league in this area. So yeah, I mean, again, just to rehash, preseason top 5: 1 is Windsor, 2 Cardinal Newman, 3 Rancho Cotati, 4 St. Vincent, and 5 is Casa Grande. And then a few bubble teams too, who we think that, again, this is a long season, and I think a few of these teams probably should slide up here at some points too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you remember anything, you remember our rankings last year, Windsor, Newman, and Rancho all flip-flopped all over the place. I remember Windsor was at 3 when Rancho was at 1, and Windsor beat Rancho, so that knocked them out. It was just a big merry-go-round between those 3 in terms of the rankings last year, so it should be good. But let's head on to our predictions, kind of. Gus, last year you had me by 3 games overall. Jesus, we predicted a lot of games. It didn't feel like that much, but we predicted a lot of games. Gus, you went 99-38 last year. I went 96-41. Obviously, we're looking to capitalize on those strong records there. But
that's pretty close, actually, for a whole season that we were.
I was pretty proud of myself, man. I was pretty proud for first year on the job. I was pretty proud of myself.
Not bad.
But hey, we got some exciting matchups week 1. I mean, this season isn't waiting for anyone, so it's pretty good. Let's start with our game of the week, which is going to be Petaluma versus Rancho Cotati. That is going to be at Santa Rosa Junior College's Bailey Field on Friday night. Quite a venue to kick off the season, Gus. We are both going with Rancho for this one.
Yeah, I mean, again, two teams with a lot to replace. I mean, like we've already talked about Rancho a bit, but Petaluma kind of same thing. I mean, a bunch of their top guys from last year are gone. Quarterback Henry Ellis graduated. Their top running back Silas Paula Georges is gone. Their top receiver Dawson Shaw graduated. Some guys in the line graduated as well. So lots of pieces to replace. I know that Rick Chris, Petaluma's head coach, is high on this group. He's high on his starting 22, but he has kind of expressed some concerns about depth. So hopefully everyone stays healthy. Again, that's always that's always priority number one is everyone stays healthy. But I just think talent wise, I think Rancho Cotati probably has the edge in this one by maybe a couple touchdowns. But I don't know. I mean, again, it's a whole new season. It's week one. It's a whole neutral site field. Anything can happen. But I think Rancho Cotati opens this one up with I'd say probably a two touchdown win. I'd say.
Sure, I think it actually would be a little closer than people would think. Petaluma likes to hold that ball and likes to keep it no matter who's on offense. I mean, that's just how the way their offense rolls. So if they can keep the ball out of Rancho Cotati's hands, it's definitely going to play into their favor. I will be covering that game for our game of the week. Gus, you will be making that trip up to Ukiah, where they will face Montgomery in their opener. Ukiah, obviously, new head coach Paul Cronin. He is back after a year hiatus, and we are both going with the Wildcats. Gus, I'll let you take your prediction first.
Yeah, so Ukiah and Montgomery, two teams that they played each other. I believe they played each other last year, and I forget what happened. And I think, yeah, this is bad. This is great podcasting here, but yeah. So Montgomery actually shut him out 27-0 last year. And Ukiah, went on to finish 6-3 in the season. They missed the playoffs, and I think Monty went like 3-7 and then made the playoffs or something like that. So, but very, very different teams this year. Montgomery graduated like 20 seniors. I think this is probably going to be a bit of a building year for them. Just, they have some good young players, but not a ton of football experience. So, yeah. And then Ukiah, this is a huge boost in the arm, from a guy like Cronin, who second winningest coach, in some kind of history, behind Jason Frenchie. And, he has 222 career wins. He's 10 away from, tying Frenchie for the all-time, Sonoma County record. Yeah. But again, this is also a very, new Ukiah team. I think he only really inherited them in May, I want to say. So kind of a shortened off season for them, but I don't know, we've talked to Paul, or we talked to Paul pretty regularly, and you did a preview on them. So I think he's kind of coming around on his guys. I've heard he likes, a lot of, I actually heard him sort of compare this team, I think, to his first team at Windsor, which went on to the, to NorCal playoffs. Obviously it's a much different, the talent level too, I think, is probably, I mean, those guys had some D1 players all across the board, and I don't quite know if Ukiah has that same personnel, but it sounds like he's high on this group, almost as high as he was on that group as far as kind of potential and what they can do. So Ukiah, yeah, I think Ukiah probably could be a pretty good team this year. I think they'll be a competitor in the NBL Redwood, and I think they get this first game against Montgomery too. And yes, I will be there, so I will have the full in-depth report on how Ukiah is looking this year after Friday night.
Yeah, I totally agree with your sentiments there. I think a key matchup on the outside is going to be why Ukiah's big body wide receiver Jackson Page, who's like 6'4", and then Montgomery standout Isaiah Wright, who's got a couple D1 offers as well. It's going to be a key matchup for both teams on the outside, but I think Ukiah pulls it out as well. Annalee opens up against Lincoln down in San Francisco. Obviously, Lincoln defending state champs in Division 7. We're split in this one, Gus. It's our first split of the season. Annalee, they got a lot of numbers though. They got a lot of kids coming out for football this year. Obviously lost a lot with obviously Sammy Long, Giovanni Byzantine, but bring back some key players and like some of their wide receivers and things like that. But I'm going with the defending state champs in this one. I just don't think Annalee has brought back enough to get back to what they were last year. So I'm going with the defending state champs.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you partly on this. Annalee did lose a ton. I mean, Sammy Long graduated. Like you said, Giovanni Vizintin, Diego, Ruvalcaba. I always have a hard time pronouncing that. Jaden Brady, their stud running back too. A lot of skill players they have gone, and you're right. Numbers are up. Football experience maybe isn't quite there yet, but just kind of looking at kind of how things went last year. So Lincoln lost to Windsor last year, 42-3. And then Annalee actually played Windsor pretty tough last year. I believe it was like 51-30. So they put up some points against them. And again, very different teams. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I do kind of think that Annalee, again, they're going to be a very different, new look team this year, probably scheming differently. But I don't know. I just got a feeling about Annalee in this one. Big numbers. I don't, I know Lincoln, Division 7 schools usually don't have huge rosters. I don't know a ton about Lincoln, so that could be completely off base. But either way, I just feel like Annalee might sneak this one out and kind of get a good win open the year. I think people are a bit down on them this year, which I understand, but I don't know. I'm thinking Annalee might pull this one out. So
Yep, they did surprise some people at the at 7-on-7 at St. Vincent too. Don't forget about that.
yep.
All right, Santa Rosa, San Rafael. These teams played week 1 last year as well. San Rafael won 24-8. Santa Rosa ended up finishing 1-9. Did not win a league. Did not win a league game last year. San Rafael went 5-6 and went 3-4 in the MCAL. We think it's going to be the same result this time around. San Rafael takes that opening week game. Santa Rosa lost their big stud wide receiver, Nolan Frost. They do have Talon Patrick back and Nolan Bankston back, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think San Rafael pulls it out.
Yeah, and San Rafael did lose a lot. I mean, they lost their top 4 receivers, they lost their top running back, and they lost their they lost their starting quarterback. But yeah, I mean, I do just think that Santa Rosa is probably headed for a bit of another rebuilding year. I think they, again, like you said, they have some they do have some good talent. Nolan Bankston is a pretty good quarterback. Talon Patrick has been has shown some really nice flashes in some times that we've seen him play. Don Lemus is a strong running back, and then they also have Cooper Lee, who's a big, tall, 6'4" wide receiver, who I think could cause some matchup problems. But yeah, I mean, San Rafael, again, they have a lot to replace, but their program has been steadily on the rise the last couple of years. I think their head coach Casey Sully has done a really good job kind of rebuilding what their program was, and yeah, I think they have some good momentum even going into this year after losing a lot. So yeah, we love Roy over at Santa Rosa, but yeah, I think we're going with San Rafael on this one.
Yep, fair enough. All right. Pretty big one, open week 1 here, Gus. Cardinal Newman, Casa Grande, two Sonoma County schools going at it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we touched on both teams a little bit earlier. We'll touch on them more later on. But in this one, we both got the Cardinals. Obviously, I think their defense is just going to be too stout. I don't think Casa Grande's offense will be hitting stride yet, especially with a brand new QB.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, all the returners on the defensive side of the ball for Cardinal Newman. I just think Cardinal Newman will be too much week 1.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. Yeah, top 5 matchup here too. Two teams in our top 5. But yeah, I just think Newman is going to be a very, very good team this year, and it's going to be Casa always has a pretty high powered offense, but this is a very, very tough challenge for them week 1. So, and yeah, I just think Newman is a better team in this one.
Yep. All right, Middletown and Piner. This is an interesting one, Gus, because we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but after what Clear Lake did to St. Vincent last year, I mean, people kind of underestimate the NCO1 football, to say the least. Middletown finished 3rd in that league.
That was a fun race last year too. I mean, that was a
crazy race.
It was like flip flop and everyone's moving around, and yeah, crazy.
Lots of scenarios. Obviously, Piner coming off a definite down year. Their offense definitely underperformed. But Matty Erickson, he's now a senior at quarterback. They did bring back a lot as well. They only lost a couple guys. I know NJ Robert, he was key to their passing attack, but they do bring back some studs. So I think Piner's going to take this one. As we always say, once Terrence Bell gets that passing attack going, it's very, very tough to stop. So yeah, I'm going Piner in this one. Same with you.
Yeah, Middletown came on, if I remember correctly, pretty strong in like league play last year. Kind of made a bit of a push for the league title. But yeah, Piner, I think just returns too much. They have too much firepower coming back. Like you said, Matty Erickson. Guys like and Jaden Hernandez, who is going to prime for a big junior year. Apollo Pereira, really athletic, wide receiver, defensive back. Yeah, I'm not too sure about what their line looks like, and that is kind of where Middletown is that's more of Middletown's bread and butter. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Terrence gets the passing attack going here, and I think Piner opens up the season with a win.
Yep. Um, okay, Sonoma Valley Alhambra, Gus, another team, Sonoma Valley, with a brand new head coach, Max Pond, comes over from 8-man football in Branson, where he just kind of wreaked havoc. And he takes over a Sonoma Valley team that's actually pretty promising. I'm actually really high on the Sonoma Valley team. They bring a lot of weapons back. Tranoma and Hudson Giarita. I know Hudson Giarita is already getting some D1 looks. But they bring some firepower back. I know they're not the biggest team in the VVAL by any stretch of the imagination, but they're pretty promising, and I think that they're going to come out with week 0 and get that week 1 win under their belts.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a homer pick for both of us because I think both of us are pretty high on Sonoma Valley this year, and not a ton of background with Alhambra. I believe they played last year, and I think Sonoma Valley won in dramatic fashion, if I remember correctly. Again, my best is bad podcasting as I'm looking up. They did not play last year. Just kidding. Scratch that from the record, but. Yeah, Sonoma Valley, like you said, a lot of good players back. I think we're kind of rooting for them in a way, just because it's kind of a down program. They did make the playoffs last year for the first time in a while, but just one of these teams that you root for these programs, that haven't had a lot of success recently. To have success. And so I think Sonoma Valley is one of those teams. And so I think we're all kind of secretly just like, come on, like you guys could do it this year. I know I do that, unabashedly for my Greyhounds. Maybe not the best couple of years for them, but you just want to see, these teams that struggle, turn around. So I think that's where we're both at with Sonoma Valley this year and for this pick. So yeah, we're both going Sonoma Valley on this one.
Yep. Okay. Cloverdale, Ripon Christian. Cloverdale lost a lot. Their quarterback Mason Catarelli transferred to St. Vincent. He's down in Petaluma now. They ran him rampant last year. I know Coach Galloway's going to miss him. But Ripon Christian is pretty darn good, Gus. There's really no doubt about that. Yeah. So we're both going with Ripon Christian in this one.
Yeah, Ripon Christian. I'm looking it up right now. I believe they were. Yeah, so they made the NorCal Division 5 AA NorCal tournament last year, and I believe they won their section in San Joaquin for small school. Yeah, so they're a very, very, very good small school program. Division 7 over in San Joaquin. Yeah, and they kind of trounced Cloverdale early in the season, or in Cloverdale season opener last year. And you're right. Cloverdale has a lot of new pieces back. Ripon Christian is kind of a small school powerhouse. So, I think it's Ripon Christian all day in this one. So.
Yep. Okay, Skyline Maria Carrillo. Very, very new look Maria Carrillo, by the way. After just following him and kind of watching him at the scrimmage last Friday night, very new look squad for Carrillo. They do bring some guys back. Nehemiah Holiday, he's going to be key on the outside, both offense and defense. Their new quarterback Cooper Bluestone, sophomore coming up from JV. He looks pretty shifty, so he's he should be key. And then obviously Wyatt Olson leading that backfield as well. We're both going with Maria Carrillo. They were hit by injuries last year hard, to say the least, and kind of want to see them get back in their winning ways as long as they stay healthy. So I'm going with Maria Carrillo.
I like it. I think. I mean, don't know a ton about Skyline. I know they had a game against Windsor last year that they had to cancel. I think due to some fight or something on their campus, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I mean. Like you said, Carrillo has definitely has some new faces and some new pieces, but they have some good players coming back, and I just kind of like how Carrillo looks, in the especially for their preseason schedule. I think they will get a few wins in the preseason, and I think this will be one of them. So, not a whole lot more on that, but yeah, I think Carrillo takes this one.
Yep. Okay, let's head over to 8-man football on Friday night. LC Allen heading down to 8-man versus Roseland University Prep, who had a pretty stellar year last year. It's been a couple rough years for LC Allen, Gus. I think that's fair to say. But they are now heading to 8-man football, despite having the highest amount of numbers in recent memory for their program, just under like 40 kids or something like that, which for an 8-man program is huge.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking RUP kind of follows the momentum of their stellar season last year, and gets that win. I just don't think LC will have been used to 8-man football just yet. So because they did play a JV 11-man schedule last year, so I'm going with
It's a
RUP.
different game. Yeah, it is definitely a different game. And RUP probably is a little more familiar with that style of play. But I'm curious because you wrote the LC Allen preview. Did you find out if I'm sure like a bunch of these kids are also rugby players too? Do you know that?
Yeah, a good amount of them are.
Okay.
But then again, it's different tackling with pads on than without.
No, for
But
sure. But yeah, but I'm just thinking in terms of like, they still have some athletes out there, who know how to run, pass, block,
sure.
whatever.
Oh yeah,
So
100%.
yeah, and really in 8-man football, I feel like a lot of it, obviously technique is a big part, but the team usually with the better athletes usually wins. So I don't know. I'm thinking LC Allen's first varsity football game in a couple years. Good numbers. It sounds like they might have some good athletes too. I think 8-man football, you kind of throw everything out the window and just kind of see what happens, especially with two, newer programs like this. But I don't know. I think LC comes back and gets off the schneid immediately. So kind of like I said about Sonoma Valley too. It's one of these programs where it's like, you want to see them have success. Just for the kids in the community and stuff. So I'm gonna go LC Allen on this one.
Yep. Sure thing. All right, Saturday. St. Vincent's moving up to D6, like we kind of mentioned before, and Trent said this was when I was talking to Trent earlier, he said that this was the hardest preseason schedule he's probably ever put together
It looks like it for sure,
of quality of opponents. So, and doesn't start easy, obviously, with De Anza. Very, very good program, De Anza is. But, St. Vincent's at home on Saturday afternoon. We know teams kind of have struggled in that environment. So many teams are used to playing Friday night, not Saturday afternoon under the sun. I do think St. Vincent's weapons are enough. The returning weapons, that is. So I'm going with St. Vincent. And Gus, I hope you still have learned your lesson from picking against St. Vincent last year.
Literally what I was going to say. I've learned my lesson. I will not be picking against St. Vincent. Probably in, if not many, if any games this year. I think St. Vincent, again, they've proved me wrong enough times that I think I just need to start siding with them more and more for my predictions. So, yep, I'm going with St. Vincent in this one as well. Like you said too, though, I think they have a pretty tough non-league schedule. They're playing Oakland Tech again, who had a very good last year as well, and then some other big programs like Montgomery too. So, just should be and Balboa too. So it should be fun to kind of see how St. Vincent fares in the early going, but. That is our entire week 1 schedule. We do have, I believe it's only 2 teams not playing this week, and that's Windsor and Healdsburg. Windsor opens next week against Escalon, which should be an awesome game. Escalon is a powerhouse out of the Sac-Joaquin section.
Yep.
And I believe they won state in, I forget what division it was in, but I think they're coming off a state championship last year. And then Healdsburg is opening at St. Helena next week as well. So, new head coach for Healdsburg as well. Randy Parmeter, stops at El Molino, I think, for a while, and then he was at I think he assisted at maybe even at Windsor, and then I know he assisted at Cloverdale for a while too. So, anyway, guy with good experience, and I think Healdsburg. I've heard some good things about where their program's headed. So. That is our entire week 1 slate of predictions. And I think we'll move right into and again, we've kind of touched on this, I guess, a bit at this point, but kind of how we think the league races will come, will break down. Again, if you remember last year, a lot of every league, NBL Oak, NBL Redwood, VVAL, all decided in like the final weekend of the season. Windsor beat Newman, last second controversial play, call whatever you want to call it, to win the NBL Oak, first league title they had won in 10 years. Casa, American Canyon, Petaluma, Vintage, we're all dueling it out, in those last couple of weeks, for the VVAL title. And then, St. Vincent Carrillo kind of came down to that last game too, which you were at. For the NBL Redwood. So kind of getting into this season's races. I guess we'll kind of briefly mention, the NCL team. So, LC Allen, new 8-man team. I believe they're in NCL 2 with teams like Branson, Stuart Hall, your alum, or your high school. And then I think Roseland, I believe, is still playing teams like Calistoga, other smaller, more established 8-man teams as well. So don't really, again, we don't really have a great, finger on the pulse of, the 8-man small school scene so much. So we're not really quite sure what to make of any of those at this point, but kind of feel like both teams might be, I know RUP, I think, should definitely be competitive. We'll see about LC. Cloverdale, I think too. Again, with these kind of small school leagues, I think things are pretty unpredictable. Kids can get hurt. Anything can really happen, when you're dealing, with teams, especially with teams, with roster sizes of like mid 20s, even low 40s sometimes too. So, anything can really happen. I think Cloverdale should be in the mix because, again, it's small school leagues. It's just kind of a lot of parity usually in those leagues. I guess kind of moving in, to the VVAL, we both kind of split some of these team previews. We kind of have a decent idea of what the local programs look like. But, obviously last year, Petaluma kind of started out hot. They beat Vintage midway through the season, first time they had ever beaten Vintage. And it kind of seemed like that they had the inside track, for the league title. And then just injuries, a couple really narrow, tight losses, including in the Egg Bowl. The kind of cost them down the stretch, but they had, they were for sure up there. Casa was up there. I know American Canyon was also up there too for a minute. But then Vintage, like they do over and over again, just came over the top and took it. So, what are we thinking this year for the VVAL, Keenan? I don't know. I'm thinking. Again, I think until further notice, I think Vintage is still kind of the class of that league. Just really consistent program, tons of kids, good coaching, just pretty instinct, identity. I kind of think Vintage is probably the team to beat over there, but. I don't know. What are we thinking for the VVAL in terms of how things will finish this year?
Yeah, what I love about the VVAL is how physical the league is, right? You got a handful of teams that are just physical up front, smash mouth football, Vintage, American Canyon, Petaluma, and Casa has always notoriously had a pretty big line as well. But yeah, Vintage just out physicals everybody, man. They just put their nose to the ground and just dig deep and just let them have it and really wear teams out. So I'm kind of with you on that. I think Vintage is still the cream of the crop up there. Not too sure how much they lost or anything like that. We've been kind of focusing on.
I know they bring back their top rusher, and they always have very good line players too. So, and that's always been their identity is they're not a big running or throwing team. Smash mouth, run the ball, 50 times a game kind of thing. Hold the ball, defense. And it's been very, very successful for them too.
Yeah, I think I think Vintage is still going to be the top until someone knocks him off. Like we said, Casa beat him 2 years ago. Petaluma beat him last year.
Yeah, they're not untouchable. The first 3 years that they were in the VVAL, they no one could even touch them. And now they've lost a couple times the last couple of years, and a few teams have gotten close too. So yeah, you're right. They are not immortal as we all kind of thought.
I will say this, and we kind of mentioned it before, but perhaps the smallest team in terms of physical size, Sonoma Valley and the VVAL, they can make some waves. They could surprise people. They're fast, they're athletic, they're agile, things like that. Heck, even Napa too. Napa's got a new coach. as well. Napa's bringing back a good amount of people. So I think vintage is still the class, but again, with the V-Val, you never really know. It's kind of wide open until all the dust is settled, which I kind of like about the league. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens this year for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think it is vintage is kind of still the class of the league. But again, I don't think they're unassailable. I think American Canyon should also be pretty good. They also, they have a new coach, some pretty good returners as well. And then yeah, Pedlam Casa, I think could also be in the mix there. Sonoma Valley, like you said, could surprise some teams. And then yeah, we'll see and then Napa and Justin Siena, we'll see. Again, I don't know a ton about either of those programs. I know Justin has been pretty consistent. I think they might have a new coach this year as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, again, small school, so we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But yeah, VVL should be a fun race again this year. Again, and then also who knows? We'll look back in 3 months, when the season's wrapping up, and just see how terribly wrong some of these predictions will probably be. So, but that's part of the fun of it. So. All right, moving on to the NBL Redwood. St. Vincent defending 2 back-to-back champs, right? They're going for their 3rd straight title. Yeah, I kind of came down to a fun little end there. St. Vincent and Carrillo. St. Vincent I think took care of business pretty convincingly. Carrillo definitely was bitten by the injury bug. They had some. I mean, they were a pretty good team when they were fully healthy, but they were just almost never fully healthy, unfortunately. Yeah, and like we kind of said earlier too, some new faces. Probably Jay Higgins. Still I think he's almost in his like their 20th something year there or something. But just they're going to be who they are. Stick to their identity, physical, grind it out, smash mouth team, kind of like vintage. Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, again, they always have guys step up, and when they when you think that there's no one there, and then all of a sudden a guy rises up and does that. I think that'll probably be the case again this year. So, but yeah, I think the Redwood could be a really interesting race this year. Just because with Cronin at Ukiah now, I think that's probably worth a couple wins at least. Piner could be pretty frisky. I mean, like we talked about, their offense should be so much fun to watch this year. With Maddie and Jaden and Apollo and some of those other really kind of springy outside guys. Healdsburg, again, like we said, as Randy Parmeter, up there, I think he's had some success kind of getting some kids back into the program and starting to develop some talent. And I've heard he has a pretty good coaching staff up there as well. So I'd love to hear that from my Greyhounds. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a 2-team race between St. Vincent and Ukiah. That's just kind of what I'm hearing. That's what some other coaches are thinking too. St. Vincent so far has proven again to be the class of that league, just all around. And again, so many pieces to replace too, but good defense, just disciplined team. Really good line play, good running backs. They have 2 quarterbacks this year too. They have Gabe Casanovas, who will be starting, I think, right away. And then also the Cloverdale transfer, Mason Catarelli, who transferred in this summer, and he has to sit out, I think, 4 games. Then he'll come back in some capacity as well. So he'll be a big boost for them too. So I think it's going to be St. Vincent and Ukiah, but I would not be surprised if Carrillo or Piner, might make a little bit of noise up there too. So what's your take on the Redwood this year?
Yeah, I'm pretty with you on all that what you kind of said. I think St. Vincent has just reloaded a lot. They're obviously not going to be as strong as they were. I don't think they're going to be blowing out teams by 30, 40, 50 points like they were last year, which could help them down the road. Because I was talking to Trent, and Trent was kept saying about how they didn't really face adversity until that final game. They only trailed for 17 seconds all season until that point.
Crazy.
So that may help him, but yeah, I think I was talking to Jay Higgins last year at the scrimmage, and he kept saying last year when the season was about to start, he was licking his chops with all the running backs he got and all that stuff, and then unfortunately they all got injured, which is pretty bizarre. It's kind of almost like an anomaly, Gus, of those injuries.
It was every time I talked to Jay after a game, and he's like, "This guy got hurt. This guy got hurt," and I was like, "God, you guys just cannot stay healthy."
I know, but yeah, you guys going to be interesting. We'll see in the first couple games how they're looking, but yeah, I think St. Vincent is the cream of the crop for now. So let's head on to that NBL Oak. Gus, the schedule gods got it Perfect again. Windsor Newman, final game of the season, this time at Newman. You were at the game last year, decided by that controversial PI call. You could talk about that in a little bit, but Windsor's the hands-on favorite. We kind of talked about that before. Newman Rancho pretty even. Um, they might be flip-flopping in our rankings. Who knows? It really depends. Last year, Rancho shut out Newman.
Well, Rancho's beat Newman the last 2 years, so
Yeah, well,
definitely.
yeah, that's a good point too. So
Mhm,
Rancho shut out Newman last year because Prue just ran riot over everybody.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, Gus, I mean, we kind of talked about it already, but what are your thoughts on the Oak this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Windsor's league to lose. They have a brutally tough non-league schedule, and they're going to be doing that without a few of their transfers like Ananias Walker from Rancho, without a guy like T.J. Allen, an incoming lineman from St. Vincent, and then without a guy like Lonzo Arterbury, who's coming in from Cardinal Newman. And we'll touch a bit more on him too here in a second. But yeah, I think again, Windsor is gonna be very battle tested by the time we get to league. And yeah, they don't play. Let me pull up their schedule real quick because I believe they finish out. Yeah, so the last four. So they all right. So they have Rancho in the second week of league play, and then they have Newman the final week on November 3rd, and like you said, that's at Newman. So I would not be shocked if we see. I'm trying to look at both these schedules, but I would not be shocked if we have both Newman and Windsor coming into that final game undefeated in league. You know, uh, Newman plays Rancho on October 20th, and then yeah, 2 weeks later, they finish up with Windsor. So wouldn't be shocked if both teams come in 4-0. And I think again we're getting another collision course where this will come down to that final game of the season. And like we said, last year was crazy. That final PI call, controversial PI call. Newman people I know are still upset about that. Um, in the end zone, gave Windsor one final play at like the inch line, and they punched it in and won with no time left. Game-winning drive, fourth quarter. First time they've ever beaten Newman in their school history. So a huge moment for Windsor, but definitely something that Newman remembers and is looking to, I guess, even the score this year. So, but yeah, again. Rancho, I think, has a good chance to play spoiler this year too. Again, I know their coaches are a little like, not quite sure what we got, and maybe they're sandbagging a bit, but I think that they will be very good as well. But I think this probably is going to be a Windsor Newman race this year. And then I think kind of for the bottom three teams, Santa Rosa, Annalee, and Montgomery, I think this could just be a bit of a building year for a lot of those programs too, heading into next year, which is going to be the massive 3 league, 3 county realignment, which is gonna be super fun. And there's a bunch of writing on that I've done already, but essentially we're the VVAL, the MCAL, and the MBL are all gonna those whatever 20 some teams are all gonna be re-split up into 4 different new leagues, comprised of all the teams in those leagues based on kind of competitive equity. So like the top league is gonna be like Marin
Yeah.
Catholic, Newman, Rancho, Windsor, Vintage, San Marin, and then so on and so forth, like Petaluma, AmCam, Casa in the league and
Sure.
stuff. So it's going to be super fun. I know a lot of coaches are excited about it. Coaches, in the top league are like, this is a great challenge. This is what you coach for. Coaches in, the bottom tier leagues are kind of like, this is going to be great for our programs because we can kind of hopefully start to get some more success, be more competitive in games, and get more kids back into our program and kind of start building the program out again, which I think was, would be great for that too. So anyway, very much looking forward to that. So, but kind of a weird thing, this is the last year that we're going to have like an NBL, football league, but who knows, things could change back, after this realignment cycle, but going to be weird after this year.
I'm telling you, I mean, the title just might mean that much more. Imagine
It's
going
true.
out as the final VVAL or final NBL Oak champion. You know what I'm saying? But you kind of mentioned, just going back real quick, you kind of mentioned Rancho being spoiler. This is going to be the 3rd year in a row where Rancho has to play Windsor Newman back to back. Which I think could be could be another story we're telling down the road. If Rancho does play spoiler. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's true.
I mean, like you said, I mean it's gonna be a fun Oak season, that is for sure. All
I
right,
would,
Gus. One
I would
final
agree with
thing.
you.
I'll let you take this one because
Yeah, so
because
Yeah,
You're
we've
in the
been
thick of it, my friend.
I know we've been beating around this bush all podcast, but we'll finally address it. So let's talk about the Newman situation right now. And if you are watching this, let's listen to this, however you're consuming this, and I'm sure you have some idea of what I'm talking about. But yeah, I guess I'll get into the nitty gritty. In case you are not aware of what's going on. So a former Cardinal Newman player who I actually mentioned earlier, Lonzo Arterberry, he's now over at Windsor, has filed a lawsuit against Richard Sanchez, the current head coach at Cardinal Newman, alleging retaliation. He was expelled. He claims for bringing to light, I guess, some racist comments that he says that Sanchez made directed at him and other players of, Black and Latino players, gave them racist nicknames, he says. And essentially what Arterberry's lawsuit is saying is that, when he presented these, when he brought forward these complaints to the school kicked him off the team, or Sanchez kicked him off the team, and then the school eventually expelled him, or I guess disenrolled him is the term that they used. So he is now suing for several. He's accusing them of breach of contract, breach of covenant of good faith, fair dealing, retaliation, discrimination, a bunch of things. So we had known about this. I guess a bit of context here. So we had become aware of this issue bubbling up in the springtime, kind of when it was happening in real time. Lonzo's mom made a big Facebook post, and Lonzo had actually gotten spoken at the Santa Rosa City Council meeting about his experience with racism, not really in specifics, but his experiences with racism at Newman. His mom's post had kind of gone into more detail about it. We had become aware of that. But then lawyers kind of got involved, and the family didn't really want to kind of go forward with any kind of story at that point. So eventually, we knew it was kind of on the back burner for a while. And so then in late July, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, the family, formally filed their lawsuit, against Sanchez, also named Monica Myrtle, the athletic director, and also Linda Norman, the school president, in the lawsuit. Filed the lawsuit late July. We found out about it like a week later, and we had, it wasn't me, but one of our other reporters wrote up just a basic lawsuit, story of like, this is what the lawsuit alleges. And we put it out. I want to say that was Tuesdays ago now, something like that. So the day after we had published it, I had already set up a time to meet with Sanchez, to talk about, to do our football preseason stuff. We published the story. I texted him the next day saying, hey, I'm still going to be coming out to campus. Again, this has all been documented in stories, that we've written, but we got it. It's all complicated here, but we got, the school president, Linda Norman said that we couldn't go out, but then she said we could go out. And then I did go out, and then Sanchez kicked me off and threatened to call 911 on me if I did not leave. So we have not spoken since then. We have not heard much from Newman leadership or Sanchez or Myrtle or anyone really. We did ask them kind of about our access this year and if we would be able to cover the team, because we do still want to, and we will still be covering Newman athletics to as much of the extent as we can. But they have also instituted a new media policy for their athletics that is pretty stringent, and they can make whatever rules they want. It's fine. That's entirely their prerogative, but it's just going to be making it harder for their athletes to kind of get the coverage that we feel that they deserve. So we'll see how that kind of plays out this year. But yeah, we're going to try to continue to cover Newman as we have in the past. And if they want to kind of cooperate with that or not, that's kind of their call. But again, it's like it just would be a shame if we can't give the kids over there the coverage that they do deserve, because there are some very, very good programs over there. Their baseball program's amazing. Their girls basketball program's great. Their volleyball program is on the up and up. They have some very good teams over there. So hopefully things don't get too weird, but we'll see. But yeah, it also kind of last thing on this, and then we'll wrap up here and send everyone on their way for this week. But it does appear that, despite, the allegations, against Sanchez, that they're going to be keeping him this year. He's heading into the season, as the head coach. It seems like that will not be changing at all. And like I said, too, I think Newman should be a very good team this year. But kind of from, my conversations with people at Newman and in their community, this issue has kind of created a bit of a split in their community, not just the lawsuit, but, some people, were kind of voicing their support, for, I guess for me getting kicked out, saying that wasn't a right thing to do. Anyway, this issue I've heard from all kind of different sides. I've heard that we're being unfair to Sanchez. I've heard that the people are Newman people are unhappy with kind of how this is being handled. Anyway, it's just kind of gotten dramatic and weird, and didn't really want it to get to this point, but here we are. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the season plays out, and especially after the season, kind of what happens. But yeah, I just kind of felt like we needed to address that, since it was such a big thing a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of died down a bit right now. But I don't expect this lawsuit or anything to be kind of, unless the Arterburys and Newman people kind of unless they settle out of court, before this gets to court, because it's not because the first, I guess, hearing date isn't until like January, and then really a trial, if it does get the trial, wouldn't even start until February. So this will kind of be just in the ether, I guess, this entire season. So but I'm sure Newman is going to try to do whatever they it can to not let it distract from their season. So but yeah, I mean, again, it is a news story. If there are any other developments, we will be covering it as a straight news story. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll try to kind of keep up our coverage as we have. So just thought that needed to be addressed, since again, it's just been out there for and just storylines are running rampant with it and such too. So Keenan, I don't know, I know you've kind of been detached a bit from the situation, but any thoughts on that, or do you just want to, or should we just wrap up and call it a day?
Well, no. Well, I mean, look, I mean, I think another thing is how unfortunate it is, like, that you're kind of in the thick of it. You're kind of in the middle of it at this point. Our whole prerogative as journalists is to not be in the news or anything like that. But it's when it's come to stuff like this, it's pretty unfortunate, to say the least. But then again, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to do a job. We're trying to give, I think. I've always thought like sort of part of my, like, an unwritten part of my job description as a sports journalist is giving these kids exposure. You know what I'm saying? So that's all we're trying to do. That's the main thing. That's our main initiative, or one of our main initiatives. Even though it's not like actually written in our job description, that's what we do. So we just want to give the kids the amount of exposure they deserve. And it's unfortunate we're in this situation. It's super unfortunate that you're in this situation. But it is what it is, and we'll just kind of still try to give them the best coverage that we can. So yeah.
Yep. No, I don't think we can say much more than that. So I think that about does it for our first return episode. Thanks everyone for listening, and again, if you got to this far, thank you even more, because I know that was it was a lot to listen to us just kind of ramble there for an hour. But again, now that we're kind of back in the football season, I think we'll be kind of keeping this going every week. Keenan, I know Keenan has a big week next week, so he might not be around. My man's getting hitched over here. When are you heading out for your wedding too, by the way?
Next Wednesday, so I'll probably be able to record the second episode of the podcast with you if you want.
All right, your last days as an unmarried man.
You don't gotta remind me. You don't gotta remind me.
No, but yeah, congrats to you. That's definitely cool. Next time, that maybe don't schedule it for the middle of football season so I can make it up. So
hey, it's week 2. At least it's not with league season, okay?
That's true. At least it's not November 3rd when it's Newman Windsor. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway. Well, I also don't think anybody wants to get married in November, so that's the other thing.
That's also a good point too. Very good point. All right. Well, anyway, thanks everyone for watching, listening, however you you consume this, and look forward to kind of getting back onto a regular schedule with this thing. So with that, we'll see y'all next week.